Around this time last year, there was a flash-in-the-pan controversy surrounding then-senior counselor to the president, Kellyanne Conway, and her 15-year-old daughter, Claudia. Kellyanne is a lifelong conservative, was previously Trump's campaign manager, and has spent her career as a general Republican Party strategist. Her time in the White House was marred with controversy, ranging from relatively benign misspeech, like the fictitious Bowling Green massacre, and stuff like alternative facts, to actually unethical violations of the 1939 Hatch Act, preventing members of the federal government from using the powers of their offices to influence elections or promote the businesses of family members of the president, both things that Kellyanne did repeatedly. During this 2020 Conway controversy, Kellyanne and her husband George requested that the media keep their children out of the limelight. After all, no matter what Kellyanne herself did, the kids aren't to blame, and it's kind of tacky to bring them into it. But Claudia Conway, having her own platform as a TikTok influencer, decided to speak up anyway, saying of her father, "You're just mad that I'm finally getting my voice heard," and "sorry your marriage failed." Claudia's channel at the time was full of Black Lives Matter, socialist, ACAB, and anti-Trump content. At one point she said, "If you're a woman supporting Trump, I feel bad for you. You must really hate yourself. Lots of internalized misogyny. Yikes." Apparently meaning the message to be a jab at her mother. Afterward, Claudia announced that she was seeking legal emancipation from her parents. 6 months later, Claudia posted a series of secretly recorded videos where Kellyanne was insulting her, berating her, and hitting her.
One fucking bit for you to tell people I'm a bitch.
What?
What?
There's something wrong with you.
Yeah,
You're
there
mocking
is.
me.
You think I'm mocking you? I'm trying to have a conversation with you. You know what you've done to yourself?
Years.
Do you know what you've done to
I'm
yourself?
15.
No. You're fucking immature. Before you get it all over the sheets that I cleaned.
Can you stop?
No, you don't ignore me. Asshole. Get my mom cleans!
Can you please, Mom?
No, you clean! I want you out of here! You were making you mad. Some 15-fucking-year-old made you mad.
These videos went viral, and shortly afterward, a topless picture of Claudia was posted to Kellyanne's official Twitter account. Keep in mind that she's still 16 at this point, and the picture is quickly deleted. We don't know who posted that pic, whether it was Kellyanne going even more off the rails, or Claudia framing her mom, or some hacker fucking around, or what. The only thing we do know is that Claudia had taken a topless pic of herself, and for some reason that picture made its way to Kellyanne's account. Of course, the police got involved, and since then the drama has seemed to calm down. Kellyanne is still posting about her politics, Claudia is still on TikTok but only posting vapid teenager shit, but the political drama has basically disappeared. If I had to guess, Claudia is just biding her time until she can move out. It's a strange story because any sane person who watches these TikToks sees that Kellyanne is treating her daughter like shit. At the same time, Claudia is living up that party lifestyle, drinking on the beach, driving around with her boyfriend in nice cars, appearing on TV.
Yeah.
Hi. Are you okay?
No.
No.
No, but yes, I'm.
Yes
so
and
good.
no.
Yeah.
She's a stereotypical Stacy with a Chad BF, and somebody's gotta be paying for all this shit. Also, even though she makes fun of OnlyFans for trying to recruit her on Twitter, she really seems to be easing into an OnlyFans light position on her account. It almost seems like kids are grooming themselves for porn nowadays. Fucking hell. The point is, this may be an extremely public, high-profile case, but it's something that a lot of progressive kids with conservative parents seem to be relating to right now. Remember this story? Teresa Duke got slugged in the face during the January 6th Capitol riots, and her lesbian, disowned daughter, Helena Duke, retweeted the video saying, "Hi mom, remember when you told me I shouldn't go to BLM protests because they could get violent? Is this you?" And it's like, fair enough. She's got you there, mom. Teresa ended up losing her job over this, and Helena has since moved away to the big city, where she now lives with her girlfriend, talking about going to the hospital because she cut herself while trying to slice an avocado, and how she wants to live in a commune because fuck capitalism, am I right? This is a common enough thing. Conservative parents that are legitimately shitty to their kids, and radicalized young leftist activists who view their parents as literally Hitler, cutting them off, moving out of their small town, and then end up becoming extremists in their own right, only for the other team. It seems to be crazier now more than it's ever been, but this effect has been seen for a while. Old people look down on young people as lacking experience or knowledge or wisdom. Young people look down on old people for being too ancient in their thinking and not updating their mental models to fit the current paradigm. On some level, they're both correct. Young people think they're the vanguard of a new society, and as soon as the last old people are finally gone, they can remake things in their image. Old people think that the kids are just being rowdy, and they'll settle down and become more conservative as they age, as that age makes them tougher and more competent. And again, on some level, they're both correct. That is some commonly repeated folk wisdom, by the way, that people get more conservative as they age. Well, how true is it, actually? Conservatives love to lean on common sense in their online discussions, while progressives will often pull out this study. Do people really become more conservative as they age? Yeah, I had a double take on it too. It's Jonathan Peterson, not Jordan Peterson. But because it's online discussions, progressives rarely read past this sentence in the abstract. Consistent with previous research, but contrary to folk wisdom, our results indicate that political attitudes are remarkably stable over the long term. Of course, the very next sentence reads, in contrast to previous research, however, we also find support for the folk wisdom. On those occasions where political attitudes do shift across the lifespan, liberals are more likely to become conservatives than conservatives are to become liberals, suggesting that folk wisdom has some empirical basis even as it overstates the degree of change. In other words, people aren't likely to change over time, but if they do change, there's a higher chance they become more conservative. The study itself describes the various reasons as to why this might be the case. Firstly, there's psychological factors. The tendency for age to bring with it increasing self-discipline and self-sufficiency, preference for order, avoidance of uncertainty, capacity to remember emotionally laden stimuli, and alterations in neural structures that come with aging. This also correlates with our understanding of fluid and crystallized intelligence. Fluid intelligence slowly declines as we age, and we can observe this in a gradual drop-off of IQ across a person's life, while crystallized intelligence remains constant. Our ability to learn new things slowly disappears, but the things that we've already learned stick with us right up to the end, seemingly providing evidence for the idea that old people appear to be stuck in their ways. The aging study also mentions that social aging plays a role. Your social circle is primarily friends and peers and romantic partners sometimes, up until you start a family. And then it shifts to a more localized circle of family members and work acquaintances. And then all social interaction drops off rapidly after retirement and the kids have left the nest. There seems to be a correlation between the loss of naivete and idealism with the adoption of more and more responsibility as we grow older. This view seems to be congruent with another paper, Ideological Differences in the Expanse of the Moral Circle. And yes, that's the actual Jonathan Haidt involved this time. By the way, because these are all American studies, they use liberal to refer to left and conservative to refer to right. I hate how Americans have ruined language. Liberals, progressives, and socialists are not the same thing. But the point is, the more leftward people go, the more likely it is that they prioritize friends over family, and the planet over the nation. And the more rightward people go, the opposite effect happens. For example, the love of friends remains constant across the political spectrum, but love of family goes up on the right, and love of world goes up on the left, such that on the extreme left, people slightly prefer the planet over their friends, and both significantly more than their family. You can chart a similar trend between nationalist and globalist values. You can even show that the extreme left slightly prefers non-human life over human life, while the rest of the spectrum, even the center left, prefers humanity. The most telling part of the study, in my opinion, is this heat map. Each person was given 100 moral units to assign to 16 areas of concern, represented by these 16 concentric circles, with each circle being a slightly more universalized area of concern than the previous. Circle 1, right in the center, is all of your immediate family. Circle 2 is your extended family. Circle 3 is your close friends. Then your distant friends, your acquaintances, all the people you've ever met, all citizens of your country, all people on your continent, all humans, all mammals, all animals, all living things on Earth, including amoeba, all animals in the universe, including undiscovered alien life, all living things in the universe, including alien amoeba, plants, and trees, all things in the universe, including non-living things like space rocks, and finally, the universe itself. Each participant had to divide up their 100 moral units to each of these 16 areas of concern. The heat map shows that the conservatives, on average, place the majority of their moral units on circles 3 and 4, their close and distant friends, while liberals place the majority of theirs on circle 14, all living things in the universe, including alien amoeba, plants, and trees. Moreover, conservatives were more likely to spread their moral units out a little bit more than the liberals, with the highest value on the liberal heat map being 20 units in one location, while the highest value on the conservative heat map was 12. The liberals were more likely to crowd their moral units on the more universalist domains, while the conservatives crowded them on localist ones. Comparing the extremes, your average conservative cares more about his immediate family and his close friends than the universe or any random amoeba in it, and your average liberal cares about the inverse, more about the universe and its random amoeba than his immediate family or close friends. And even though humans do actually only have so much moral consideration to pass around, just to ensure that their results weren't the product of artificially limiting the amount of concern they have at 100 units, they replicated the test with an infinite amount of moral units. And despite it being infinite, the distribution ended up the same. Putting aside the more obvious implications of the study for now, this lines up with the aging study's assertion that your moral concerns change as your social circles do. When you're young and moving around for work or school and traveling a lot and living this cosmopolitan lifestyle where you form no real lasting social bonds, your moral attention will be allocated more towards universalist concerns. When you're a bit older and you have a family and a house and a job, your moral attention will be allocated towards more localist concerns. And since moral attention correlates with political leanings, it's no surprise that living a more normal life would make people more conservative. The aging study also brings up some more obvious points. An older person who has had a successful career has seen his wealth grow over time due to that hard work, and 1, doesn't want his wealth to be stolen by redistributive efforts, and 2, doesn't understand the complaints of the poor young person, because he was also once a poor young person and he worked and made money, so they too will work and make money. Being poor and young and then older with money is exactly how you want a functioning society to work. It means that you're able to produce the necessary excess resources for your future self to live on when you can't work anymore. However, the aging study does bring up one good point against the trending conservative hypothesis, that older people have more health problems, and therefore that need might drive people towards more left-leaning, redistributive policies concerning universal health care or social security as they get older. At this point, the aging study spends an entire page getting into the nitty-gritty of citing and explaining many other studies, most of which conclude that political views remain generally stable over time. This view lines up with the conclusion of a completely different paper, Genetic Influences on Political Ideologies. Here, an aggregation of twin studies was used to determine that between 30 to 60% of the variance in social and political attitudes can be explained by genetic influences, but also that the search for a politics gene was fruitless, because thousands of genes influence the biological component of a person's natural political leaning. It seems that, speaking very generally, a significant portion of our politics comes from our biology, and also that our politics are not likely to change across our lifespan. Let's look at the aging study's data. When people's political attitudes did change, they were more likely to change between the ages of 26 to 35 rather than 36 to 50. The only statistically significant political change from 36 to 50 was the ideological label people identified as publicly, rather than any policy position. In other words, when people do become more conservative as they age, they're more likely to adopt conservative positions between 26 to 35, but not actually likely to identify as a conservative until between 36 to 50. This lines up with the adoption of responsibility and the changing of social circles that we talked about earlier, but it also lines up with Piaget's stages of cognitive development. Piaget developed this theory by noticing that children were not just tiny adults, but actually thought in fundamentally different ways than adults. He identified 4 stages of cognitive development: sensory motor, which ranges from birth to 2 years, pre-operational, which is 2 to 7, concrete operational, which is 7 to 11, and formal operational, which is 12 to the end of puberty and beginning of concrete adulthood, which is variable and happens all over the 20s. We're concerned with the formal operational stage, 12 to adulthood. This is where the person finally shows the beginning of fully abstract thinking, and undergoes a general awakening to the existence of morality, philosophy, ethics, and politics. Piaget referred to this stage colloquially as the messianic stage, as what often comes with it is a desire to change the world for the better. And that makes sense to me. Of course, a thinking being's first encounter with morality, philosophy, ethics, and politics would be to use their newfound skills to notice problems and feel a desire to fix them. You'd have to be a sociopath not to feel that way, I think. Jens Rogman from the University of Hamburg published a series of notes for a future study that is unfortunately not finished yet, talking in detail about the messianic stage. Young people are prone to adopt idealistic and utopian ideologies, which they reassert with an almost religious fanaticism, but due to their lack of experience and their egocentric worldview, they tend to underestimate the difficulties of implementing their ideas while being blind to the backlash of their attempts in a real-world setting. Does this sound familiar to you yet? We've all had that socialist roommate who wanted to implement broad sweeping changes to reorder the world, but somehow that never actually extended to him doing his own dishes. And of course we've all seen its inverse too. The old Fox News watching aunt who loves her family dearly, but blames all of society's problems on those damn immigrants. Everything I've talked about today seems to point at one conclusion. While leftists and rightists both have their blind spots, the problems associated with leftism are correlated with youth, simultaneously its desire for change and its lack of discipline, while the problems with rightism are correlated with age, its inability to adopt new information or understand problems larger than a local scale. Going back to the aging study, we can really hammer this point home. When movement does occur with age, the bias is towards a more conservative ideological posture. This is apparent both in moderates, where those moderates who did change were 3 times more likely to become conservatives than to become liberals, as well as in the imbalance of ideological movement for liberals and conservatives. 34% of liberals at age 26 were conservatives at 50, but only 19% of the inverse. But these numbers still leave a large chunk of people who don't change politically at all. And as the study has repeatedly said, for most people, political viewpoint is relatively stable over time. However, and right now this is just my own hypothesis, I'm just spitballing here, we all know the left has been pushing the Overton window in their direction more and more. I'm sure we've all felt that feeling of being left behind by the left as they radicalize further. I'm sure we all experienced how our normal center-left opinions suddenly in a flash became conservative ones. I know the online communists think I'm a Nazi, even though I've never actually changed my political beliefs. I'm sure we've all lost friends at this point because they radicalized and you didn't. I've certainly made multiple videos about it myself. The people who view the left-right scale as a sliding scale of good and evil view the extreme left as history's natural endpoint, and that the arrow of progress points eternally leftward over time. If you actually believe this, then forcing politics more leftward makes sense to you. It may be the case that in our current era of rapid political change, even those large swaths of people who don't become conservatives may nonetheless be labeled as them. It certainly explains why the radical progressives see the far right everywhere, even though almost none of them actually exist anymore. I'm not saying that people like Claudia Conway or Helena don't have a point. They obviously do. When parents do bad things to their kids, even in the name of conservatism, even if that conservatism was predetermined by their genetics, even if that conservatism is a natural end result of life itself, that doesn't excuse those bad things. But the young leftist who moves out of their small town and away from their icky MAGA parents also doesn't really hold the high ground. What they're doing is also probably predetermined by their genetics, or is a natural end result of the current stage of development that they're on. The problem with everything I've talked about so far is that nothing here actually determines what is correct. Just because that when people change due to age, they're more likely to become conservative, and that change is more likely to be correlated with wisdom, experience, and the adoption of responsibility, doesn't mean that the conservative position is correct all the time. Just because young people are likely to feel the drive to be revolutionaries, and that drive is likely to be directly correlated to, and simultaneously fouled up by, their own inexperience, lack of deep ties to the world, and irresponsible lifestyle, that doesn't mean that history will move leftward over time because the old people will die off and the leftists will rule everything. In the real world, sometimes the progressive is correct. Sometimes the conservative is correct. It depends on the situation. It depends on the people involved. Progressives tend to think that they will conquer society because of their utopian vision and history is on their side. Conservatives tend to think that the kids don't know anything and need to stop mouthing off. But it seems to be that becoming more conservative over time, while not guaranteed, does happen more often than the inverse, and seems to happen partially because of the biology of the person, and partially because of the practical effects of the adoption of responsibility, the cultivation of meaningful personal relationships, and general maturation. And when the inverse happens, when people become more progressive over time, when they have that glow up as a response of moving away and getting out from under the thumb of their oppressive parents, that also seems to correlate with the lack of responsibility, the lack of meaningful relationships, and the lack of maturity. In other words, if you're a leftist and you decide to self-improve, the data shows that you probably won't change political alignment at all. But if on the off chance you do happen to change, it will likely be a shift rightward, because the lifestyle that fosters leftism is not compatible with the lifestyle that fosters self-improvement. That about does it for me, guys. Thank you for watching. I hope you now understand why I've been gone so long. I've been doing a lot of reading. As always, if you want to support the channel, hit like and sub. If you want to keep me going, there's a Patreon and a Subscribe Star. And I stream every night on Twitch, so head over there after you've seen this too. I'm probably live. Thanks for watching, and hopefully I'll see you there. I love you.